Okay,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Chairperson Rossi,
Here.
Ms. Ms. Doherty,
Here.
Ms. Monkowski. Free festival.
Okay, so we're here to discuss the motion by Jackie Doherty from June 14th regarding special education improvement plan. Ms. Doherty had moved to send the agenda item 811 response to motion regarding special ed improvement plan to a special ed subcommittee meeting discussion, seconded by, well, Mr. Rossi passed by 7 yeas. But I want to say it was more specific overall. I know the concern was the placement of most of the special education students at the Bartlett Partnership School and being able to be sure that it's more equitable.
Well, it's students in wheelchairs, students with mobility issues, but also just staffing shortages around the certain positions that we've had difficulty with, and just, I think that was the general intention.
Talk a little bit about, kind of coming into the role this year. So I did find out, previously, it sounds like at some point, the Bartlett was the hub for students that was identified as the hub for students that had mobility issues in the district. So I think at this point, we have a number of students in specialized programs, but also in the life of the school, integrated into the life of the school as well, who have mobility issues either in terms of wheelchairs or walkers potentially. The facility is a bit challenging for students with mobility issues, given the multiple levels of the school, placement of the school, where it's kind of oriented in space in the lot, so to speak. So the district, I know, has started to work last summer to look at some alternative spaces for at least some of the programming for students that's over there. They do have a couple of different programs. One of them that has a lot of students with mobility needs is our LEAD program that's in that building. So it was put on hold, and it's just a little bit prior to Lowell at this point, but it was put on hold in the fall. Because I don't know that with the previous director and a changeover in that this summer, the plan was kind of really completely actionable prior to the school year. So it was put on hold just before the school year started. So we're in the place where we are putting together a committee. We've also done school tours to look at what some options are. And we're doing some more tomorrow with facilities, has gone with me, to look at what our options are. The programming for students at the Bartlett is K-8. So there's a need there to look at kind of larger what our options are district-wide, as well as not recreate access issues in a different location. So we want to make sure that we're putting them in a place that's very well thought out, that there's not, we have a lot of schools that have multiple levels, right? Just because of the age of our buildings. So I think that's kind of our priority at this point. And then there's some other needs connected to that. So bathroom access is very important. Bathroom access with kind of changing table access is important. So it's not just having necessarily a stall bathroom.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what schools in the district are identified as having, being identified as having a LEAP program? Because I know it's not just Bartlett.
Nope. Yeah. Give me 1 second. I'm working on still my memory of all the programs.
I think the Daily has, so the Bartlett has our K-4, all the elementary,
Wait,
or I think there's
sorry.
one.
Can you, sorry, so Bartlett is just K-4?
Just the elementary, I believe.
No,
And
Bartlett
middle
has,
school.
yeah, it has the middle school program
Yes,
as well.
and then
Yeah.
there's also a middle school at the Daily,
Right.
for LEAP, but there's no other elementary classroom outside of the Bartlett.
Correct.
for
Yeah.
LEAP.
So when you mention that the Bartlett is a K-8 school, it doesn't mean that all the students have to be in a K-8 school. You could have a school that has the elementary age students.
We could.
And when you're talking the LEAP program, that doesn't necessarily include all the students who have mobility
It does
issues.
not.
Because my understanding at the Bartlett, they had 19 students in wheelchairs.
Yep.
one elevator that broke, was often breaking, one place for the bus to let the students off. They had one ramp in. The programming was on the other side of the building. You had to get up the elevator, then move to the back to, I mean, it just
Yeah,
makes no sense at all, and not one handicap spot in the parking lot. Not one. So for parents who got,
The schools we have,
Yeah,
why in the world would we place it?
I don't know, it seems like it's been, the last few years.
This was
My
a-
understanding, I don't know why, to be honest
So-
with you, yeah.
this was a decision that was made by the previous superintendent. It was not brought before the school committee. We were not aware of it, which is why part of what I'm interested in moving forward is, and you mentioned this, you're going to be getting a committee or a task force together.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we have stakeholders, people that are frontline staff working with these children, and that they're part of the decisions going forward, that we're not making them in a vacuum, and that the school committee is made aware of. If, once you figure out,
Yeah,
these are 3 locations, or these are our top 4 choices, because the other thing I heard was they were thinking to move it to the STEM. Which I don't know that seems like right out of the gate, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
We've had such overcrowding at that school,
Right.
and we just spent like $8 million to get some temporary.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a conversation about the STEM. I think it's also the layout of the building.
Yeah.
So if you access the bottom floor, you can actually drive the van to the back.
Right.
And so it's very easy, and the same is true if you're up on the main level. That the drop off is right there. So I think that there's some other facilities challenges, but there's also some benefits potentially. But I think we have to look at kind of all of our options, and the numbers of the STEM and needs of the STEM has got to be factored in.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess I also have a question in terms of equity among all of our buildings, right? So when I was teaching at the STEM Academy, I could have said all of my students could have used a language-based program. So why can't we offer that in each of our buildings in some way? Some type of substantially separate language-based program, so that there's equity and CSA programs. So not all of our CSA students are housed in one building, but it's integrated, and then LEAP students, and then the EDPD program in each building, because at the end of the day, our world consists of people who have language-based disabilities, autism, life skills issues, and emotional behavioral issues. And we all need to learn how to live together. And if I can say any of my issues with my kids, with my own students, is that they don't know how to adjust to different people. And they need to be integrated in the same building and figure out how to figure out life. Because this world has made it all very separate for everybody. And it's not fair, because our kids don't know how to just have grit and to be able to survive life anymore. They've all been sectioned off. And it relates a lot to special education.
So I think the intention was never to, again, kind of. Yes, but I think it's a good question. I think, when I think back to when I was here kind of previously, one of the experiences we had is the equivalent of CSA or adjustment classrooms kind of across the district. So they would be single standalone classrooms in, let's say, every middle school for an adjustment program. And one of the things that we were seeing was constant turnover in staff. Those positions are unique when they're in a building. They're similar to some of the other special education teachers, but different. But they didn't have anybody that kind of they could work with, and people were feeling isolated. So under Janice at 80, actually, we formed a group to look at our programming, because we were a revolving door every year of psychologists doing training with the staff in those programs leaving, and then having to kind of reboot, start over. So that's in my experience, unless it happened previously at some point, That's when we went kind of grouping programs together, because you have built-in support by the teachers between each other. You also have the ability to then share staff across, right? So if my para is out today, but I have two paras and you know, you're really struggling, but or I'm struggling, you might be able to share someone with me. So we immediately saw retention in staff.
Right.
Now, the world's a little bit different now, right? So I think that while it might seem like we're separating programs by schools to some degree, having a cohort of teachers that are similar in what they're doing improves their practice. It also improves just the built-in supports for those teachers and the
So
staff.
I think it's really a balancing act.
It
is what
is,
we're looking
yes.
for, because we do see that the supports, the clusterings, it's efficient.
Yep.
You've got this community.
Yep.
That can support each other and support the students.
Right.
But there's also got to be integration with the full.
Yep.
the
Population too. So-
spectrum of
Yep.
where
Yeah.
all of our kids are.
And then the other piece is like our programs are driven by kind of our student needs. And so, you know, years ago, language-based and our adjustment programs were kind of the heavy group of programs. In the last probably 4 or 5 years here, at least for, you know, my experience, the CSA programs are you know, the needs are climbing in that population.
Right.
So the districts respond by identification of patterns through the special ed department. So I'm with you. That being said, I think that teachers do a really good job and the ETCs and the teams do a good job of making sure kids stay connected to inclusion as much as possible, even if they're in a program, right? So people say separate program, but there really is no such thing, right? So you can have a child in a program that's included most of the day. We call it a separate program, and it can be a separate program. But if that child benefits from being out into inclusion half the day, they're out into inclusion half the day. You know, it's still an individual decision.
And at the same time, like when I look at language based.
Yeah.
In this district, there's only one call program and it's between the McAuliffe and the Robbins. And I don't understand that because every school that feeds into another school, every elementary school that feeds into any other middle school should have it. Because we have a severe like disabled, like language disabled disability. And it's not being addressed and it's showing up in MCAS. So what if we had that program and we were able to help them make sense in elementary and follow through in middle school, but we don't. We only have it in one district. And why is that? And then even when they go to middle school, it lags off significantly. They don't get those language-based supports as significantly as they did in elementary. And it's almost like, good luck, right? And that's where we end up seeing most of our students going off to out of district places at the same time. But if we could save that, if we could just tighten that up and say, this is our language-based program in elementary, in middle school, and we're gonna see this through, but we don't have that in this district.
Well, so I think the programs are developed based on kind of what the teams identify our needs for kids. So if we had, it's not as though we have a number of kids who can't get into our language-based program, because there are spots, right? But we just don't at the moment have that many kids comparatively identified for requiring those services as we do something like CSA or adjustment. If we did, we would open programs, you know what I mean? I think Sula's new, I'm new. I think it's an opportunity during this year, really kind of coming years, like not everything's going to be accomplished, but looking at our programs is a piece of, I think, both of our goals. Now, as well as kind of, you know, taking care of the things that need to be taken care of now, but long term too. You know, there are students for whom we'll need more, right? That we do our best and they just kind of need more. But for most of the students that go through our programs, most of them are retained in district and make progress in district. They might need sometimes a little more one year than they do another year. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking at our programs on a number of reasons. Yeah.
So can we just like get back to
Sure.
it? So for the one about, but if we look at the agenda, number 2 is what we've been talking, we started talking about the issue of students with mobility issues all being right now at the
Yep.
Bartlett. And you said you're looking into that and you're working with a group of people, a task force. Are you talking about?
Yeah, we haven't started yet, so I've asked Mr. McLean to identify the kind of best staff teacher.
Right, so-
program. BCBA would be people from the special ed department, and then if we've identified, maybe a location or 2, that might be an option, those people would be joining, which is where we're at now, kind of looking at options.
So can we ask as a committee that you can provide us at our next meeting with a list of who are the members of the task
Okay.
force? And I'm not expecting they would all be at the Bartlett. I think you'd be looking.
No,
Right,
yeah, and there'll
and,
be some special ed administrators.
and kind of just to keep us in the loop in terms of what are some of the facilities you're thinking about? Not that we're gonna hold you to having a plan, but just keep us in this,
So that's the goal.
right,
Yeah,
and that, you know, we need to, I mean, the overall purpose of the motion was to improve special education. So with that, if that's a legitimate request that it's not gonna be too heavy of a lift for you, that we can make some progress in looking at just the mobility issue students for the first part. The other issue with the staffing, and I know we had this a lot in the spring, you know, with our speech language pathologists and that many, certain staff are, they're hard, difficult
Yeah.
positions to fill, and their caseloads are really high, and we said, we want to take a look at that, and what are some options to improve that situation, so that bullet. I don't know if you have any thoughts that you want to express tonight about that, but that would be another piece to follow up with us about. Has there been any progress in looking at those difficult to fill positions and staffing?
I know, you know, the HR department has kind of been working to recruit people. I think the 3 big groups, I mean, any kind of special ed positions are definitely hard nationwide. Definitely in the Northeast. I think multiple districts around us, everybody's kind of struggling with the same thing. I would say the big 3, and you correct me if you feel like I'm wrong, maybe 4 specialized program teachers are very hard, right? People that you're looking for, let's say specialized training like ABA, are difficult to fill. I think your OTs are hard, your SLPs are hard, and school psychs are difficult to fill. Everywhere. There's also a shortage of all 3 of those SLPs.
Special ed, my phone blows up all day long. It offers to like go to different.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean, they're heavily recruiting, agencies are heavily recruiting teachers from districts. To work for an agency to get, you know,
Like not
Yeah.
as good of a pay as if they would, but like go through. and
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work. What's the incentive?
Yeah.
You're gonna get like spit in the face. Like you're going to get disrespected and yet you're still expected to do all of this work. And it takes a lot of grit from people who are able to essentially disregard that behavior.
So we know they're difficult to fill, and we know we're not the only ones in the boat. What are some plans other than, you know, HR is trying?
Yeah.
And maybe being more creative with recruiting, or what are some out of the box?
I mean, we use some agencies, to kind of alleviate some of the caseloads, which is, we have to be careful just because of budget issues, but
Right.
agencies are significantly more expensive, let's say, than an in-house person. I think Sula and I are actually part of a group that's gonna be starting to look at SLPs and OT caseloads in general.
Right, because I thought that was part of it too, just getting a better sense of
Yep.
how we're distributing those
And the
caseloads
assignments, correct, yeah.
and what supports are in place for the SLP. So
So do we have a sense of what how many empty positions do you have right now?
So we added an SLP and an OT at the start of the school year, and they've been very difficult to fill. The only school site position we have opened is a bilingual school site position that was vacated a couple of years ago when one of our school sites had been here a long time, retired, and they've been filling that with contracted school psychologists to support those evaluations.
that's not a huge number, 3 positions.
that's not accounting for anybody that may be on a leave that I'm just not aware of, but that's my understanding unless you feel like
That's
that's.
what my understanding is.
Yep.
And so I think, we have the discussions about the caseloads and more specifically for me, I've had direct communication with the school psychologists who just get all of the evaluations and are not sure how to divvy it up when it gets too overwhelming. But we haven't had any applicants for that open position that could make a big difference for them.
In 2 years. Well, year and a half for sure.
Would have a position, I wanted to take the pressure off of
Yeah.
those cases.
And no SLP, no OT, applicants.
But if we were to restructure,
Yeah.
essentially, if we were to restructure the special ed positions, right, and say, maybe this person is just testing and this person is teaching, right? Like I think of Sula will know Dr. Ryan, like he might, right? Like,
Yeah.
how did she get to be where she is? And yet she doesn't exactly have the, psychological credentials, yet she's able to do the testings, right? And yet, at the same time, like, it's a huge relief overall for the district that they're able to have people doing that. And even in my position, I think like I have all these testings and IEPs to write. I have a full caseload of students that I'm supposed to see progress. And I'm sure many teachers feel the same way and they're extremely overwhelmed. And caseloads are not equitable.
So I think we try really hard and we have started the discussions here about how we evaluate students and do we need all of the assessments, right? Or do we sort of adjust as the needs of the students arise during those times? A psychological evaluation may not always be necessary if we've already had a pattern, right, of abilities in that way. But it's challenging, because oftentimes we depend on the school buildings as well to kind of, provide the tiered interventions to support students before they get to that evaluation process. Because our numbers are high for referrals, for the re-evals that are coming through. And so, it's a lot to manage. So we're trying to look at ways to be a little bit more methodical and more thoughtful about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So, there's no clear answer, but I think the communication with the different cohorts and the different groups to really give them what they need in the moment, I think that goes a long way until we fill the positions that are there that are actually going to make a big difference. That answers your question.
It does, and I know how thoughtful you are in all of this, both of you being on the front lines. And it's a major concern. I mean, the demand is huge and the supply of what we can do is extremely limited because of the responsibilities that we see coming. Like, that is my concern. Who would want to get into education right now in the state that it is when you get bombarded and overwhelmed? You know what I mean? And that's just speaking from the teachers.
It's changed a lot. I think it's a great field. I think that, we're trying to find a way to kind of make people stay connected, want to stay here, feel like we're moving forward, right? Which I think is a big piece of it. We've also talked to Dr. Hall about going to specialized career fairs, kind of going out and trying to be seen versus just recruiting through like a flyer or something like that. Also for like nursing positions and things that are also harder to fill, so that we can maybe send a little team out to some of those college career fairs, one coming up with BC, right? So that we're, maybe the face makes the difference versus just kind of being on a website somewhere or having an opening.
And I think really thinking about what attracts people to the work, to a district. I mean, certainly salary is one component.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're like one of the leading in terms of our area, you know, I mean, we don't pay what they pay in Boston.
Yeah.
But we have a good program for if you wanted to advance your education and things
Yeah.
like that. But if there are supports out there for the teachers to grow professionally or to know that, you know, that administration has their back or that they have coworkers that they can learn and grow with, I mean, those are all.
And that's exactly what
Culture.
we started to do, right? Since I came about a month ago or so, we, had our cohort meetings every Friday. We have meetings either with the ETCs or the school psychologists, the BCBAs, the social workers, to hear about what's working well, what's not working well, and what do they see the short-term solution. And they have ideas that we can easily adjust, right? And collaborate together. But I think it's also, building the two-way communication between service providers, because we're all a team, right? And we need to learn from one another, but really expand our understanding of what the law says, of what our students need, of what our patterns are here in the district, which is all meaningful, discussions, which makes a difference in someone's day-to-day practice,
Right.
In the moment. So I think people are feeling encouraged and that there is this, sense of community that's being built. They're coming to the meetings, they're participating in the meetings, they're looking forward to the next. We ask for feedback to see from this presentation, this discussion, what did you like? What would you like the next time we meet? So kind of seeking their input to figure out where they're at so that we can support them in this difficult, challenging time, right? So I think, people are feeling more encouraged than in the past. And just having stability in these positions, I think is really.
And credible stability, people that have been on the front lines, who provided the services. But that collaboration piece is huge. That's why I'm so, plus I feel very burned by what, finding out, oh my gosh, we've got all these children who have mobility issues at this school that makes no sense at all, that would just happen under the radar. So I think that I personally, speaking for myself, I am going to be following up on this. I want to know that you're having these meetings. Who are the people who are helping, sitting at that table? And I think for the group that you're working with, to also see the results of that, see decisions, things that are happening that are making a difference, will continue to encourage that, feeling of being part of it, being engaged.
And I think we also all know it's a work in progress, right? It doesn't happen overnight, right? And if any two people, I believe in this world, you two, I'm putting all of my stock in. And I think that you grasp Lowell more than anybody, and you get what we need. And it's just a matter of pulling it all together.
We have a lot of people with a lot of expertise here, and I don't think people necessarily realize that when they go other places. And I think we need to utilize them. I don't know that we always need to necessarily utilize outside people. Outside people are great, they're wonderful, and they bring a lot to the table. But we have a lot of people that have experience with what many other people in other districts do not have.
And I think they need to be told that.
Yep.
And valued. And I think that's one thing that Lowell does not do well sometimes, is telling somebody how much they are valued, how they could help somebody out. And that is something that household.
PSA is the other group, just, I mean, that only which I've been, but it's the other kind of programming strand. There's a million things to try and tackle, but I came on, I would say that, the Bartlett and the CSA programming is something we are also looking at.
Right, the rates of autism, now it's currently 1 in 33. compared to 1 in 150 24 years ago.
Are you talking about the specifics that, you know, the 80 program moving over or?
In general, the whole strand, right, they're all connected on a continuum, so I think, from the beginning, Stu was talking about kind of looking at the assessment process, that's a piece of it, to determine what they actually need, right, coming out of the EI, which is a piece of that. Our pre-K programming is then connected to that as a district, then looking at kind of how we're supporting and ensuring that kids are accessing least restrictive when they can, but maximizing kind of their potential so that when able, they can exit maybe a program strand, right? With our numbers being very high in some of these programs, some of those kids that might be on the bubble a bit, that maybe just need a little bit more, but in a high number classroom are really struggling, are then moving more restrictive. So it's all connected, the strand, so to speak. Yeah, EA being a piece of that.
So with the ASD as well, like, it's a full spectrum, right?
Yep.
So a lot of kids, and there are 3 levels, ASD 1, ASD 2, ASD 3, right? And so you may have a kid ASD 1 level who may just need a 5 or 4,
Yep.
not a 9.
Yep.
Right, and it's being able to delineate that.
Yep.
And say, all right, your
Yep.
your child has these parts, but.
Yep.
you can work through that.
And that's right, just so when we're talking about the numbers for students in our CSA programming, those are for our students who need more, right? We have lots of students that are in full inclusion that may have an autism diagnosis or that are just sitting in a general classroom because they are able to, right? They're kind of have a different level of need that don't require this level of programming, right? We're just really looking at our kids that need more in the program. We're looking at everybody, but
Sending out,
setting it right.
which were historically the ones we were sending out.
Correct. Yeah.
District
Correct.
places. And
Okay.
a huge improvement to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a huge move towards at least this restricted
Yeah.
environment.
Keeping kids in their home communities is a huge piece of it. Yep.
And we've seen that change.
Yeah.
We've been part of that.
And for families too, right? They feel like they're still part of the district. It's really part of your kids.
Going to some other town.
Exactly. Or on a bus, but.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be helpful for you going forward in this work from us?
I think checking in and kind of knowing where we're at, I think is important. You know what I mean? Because I think that having the committee feel like we're heading in the right direction is important to me. I'm assuming the Silva too, so I think updates is great, I think if there's any concerns ever, you just let us know about something, if your parents or, or encourage them to call us directly, it's always an option.
And I think one of the things we talked about last night was our planning process for the budget.
Yeah.
For next year.
Yep.
And so any factors that are going to be impacted.
Yeah.
That you're gonna need funding for,
Right.
like, we need to be on
Right.
board and informed of that,
Right.
early on, so although we know we can't fix everything tomorrow.
Yep.
We do have timelines that we're
Yep.
working with in terms of if you're gonna be funding for some.
So that's kind of where we're at right now. Sula's working on creating system of data collection that maybe hasn't been consistent over the years. And creating a little more consistency to that, so we can very easily pull data to identify kind of not only individual service provider caseload trends, ETCs, kind of caseload, the trends in schools, the trends by disability category, kind of all of those things that maybe have not been easy to pull in the last few years. It's a little bit of a lift for everybody, and we appreciate kind of all the work everybody's doing to help us with that. But once it's up and running, it becomes a very easy way to identify kind of what we need. And then, do we need more, another person in this role or that role, kind of depending on what the service delivery is.
So I guess,
The amount of evaluations, needs by school, yeah,
to Mrs. Doherty's point.
Yeah.
And to help to create funding, could we ask for either monthly or bi-monthly report from special education to provide the data so that we can substantiate the funding for what you need for special ed to make it what we're essentially looking for and
What data would you be looking for?
exactly what you were just saying. Like the caseloads, the schools, breakdown of schools with elevators, like where students could be placed from LEAP to CSA to even language based to make this better overall so that all kids in our district are truly getting what can help them.
So, are you thinking like, I guess I just need clarity, so like a facilities kind of breakdown?
Well,
Or
a
that would be-
facilities breakdown
Yeah.
of what students could be placed where. Maybe even credentials in a building for special ed credentials. So could teachers in that building be able to service life skills kids, right?
This would be a heavy lift, I do have. to-
Right,
Every month.
I don't wanna
Yeah.
put them on like
No,
creating
but-
reports for us.
Right,
I think if we leave it that we're gonna get an update,
yeah.
An update.
that in the next meeting, we're gonna have a sense of who the committee is or the
Yep.
task force, whatever.
And where we're at with that.
And I'm not interested in specific names, but
Yeah.
roles might be nice. You know, who's the task force working on this special ed improvement plan? And when they have a better sense of what facilities they've identified, we could possibly be moving some programs.
Yeah.
I prefer to do it, I believe they're doing the work.
Yeah.
And prefer to leave it as like, give us progress report update, rather than spelling out.
Alright, yes.
Because I
I
think
apologize.
that feels
Okay.
like,
I wanna make sure that we're, you know, kind of getting at your concern, I mean, to be honest, right? Pulling kind of like staff licensure facility
Yeah.
stuff would be a very heavy lift.
and that would take
Yeah.
them in a direction that's maybe not
Yeah.
focused on where you wanna be,
Right, yeah.
what they need to focus on now. I'm not against having that information. I just think that we need to.
Yeah.
We need to come up with a plan, and we really don't
Agreed.
have that much time.
Yeah.
In order to make it more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think if, you know, whenever we get to the point where we know what we may need that's additional or different, I think for those instances, when that time comes, we'll have the data that you're talking about, whether it's caseloads or programming needs or
Right.
things like that. I think once we kind of get to a better place, I think for sure we'll have
Right.
some. of
Cause you're not gonna be asking for something that you don't already
Yes.
have
Yes.
data to back up
For
the
sure.
need for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know who I was talking to, maybe it was, John from facilities, John Leahy, I said, go over to the Bartlett.
Oh, he's been touring with me.
When they bring the kids in on the bus, and you get all these children in wheelchairs, and then they come up this one little ramp.
Yeah.
And then some of the classrooms, have a lift to get in, so you can't, you know, how do you get, and then the lifts don't work, or it's just, and then the lead classroom doesn't have a window. They're in this basement room without, it's just not acceptable, it's not acceptable. So we're gonna.
We're on it.
I believe you are,
Thank you for taking all of that in subliminally.
Oh, no, it's been our focus for a couple of months here in terms of like looking at our programming and trying to figure out what the immediate and then long-term solutions are.
And I think I want you to see us.
Yep.
As supports, like
Okay.
we're raising the level of urgency.
Yes, yeah,
We're saying, we want this attention paid on this.
Yep.
But the supports, to do, because we have the same goal.
Anytime you need to say like, we want to bring something, to you, please let me know and we'll
Okay.
call a meeting, like
Right.
both ways,
Okay.
right? And so not just let us call a meeting, you guys call,
yep,
Right.
because
great, yeah.
Just in terms of some updates that would be, I think, helpful.
Sure.
And this is just kind of in general. One of the things that had initially started the kind of performance improvement around special ed was around the very mundane timing issues. Getting IEPs done at an appropriate timeline, you know, meeting all those requirements that the law has put in place that we haven't necessarily met all of them, so. And that's very, I think, a concrete metric
Right.
that we can,
And so
It
remember,
doesn't-
we're working on the TFM this year.
Yeah.
And so that was a finding. So we are doing uploads. Actually, there's one, yesterday, Friday, Tuesday. In terms of kind of a mid-cycle upload of data to the state. There's another one at the end of March, I believe. And then, they'll be on site again in March 17th, thank you. To come on site, kind of look at records again.
okay.
And so
So
that
when
is,
that
that
audit
is the focus for the
happens-
year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When that audit happens, like, I don't wanna see the audit, you know what I
Yep.
mean? But what I wanna get is an executive summary that tells
Yeah.
us.
Right.
that's
what
what I,
the-
that's what I had done at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
yes,
That's
what
what-
exactly,
Follow up on
Perfect.
that,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
that's exactly.
Perfect, okay.
Your key to follow-ups on your executive.
Perfect. Was there anything else when you said the timelines was the main thing?
That was the key thing
Okay.
that, I mean, again, because it's a very concrete
Yeah,
thing.
very
and,
easy
you
to
know,
measure.
And it doesn't speak at all to the quality of programming in classrooms, but
Yeah.
it is an important, it's an important thing for us to be, it's kind of the baseline. If you can't meet your timelines for that.
Yeah.
It's an indicator of other problems, so you can get that nailed down.
Do we need any type of motion? Adjourn.
Well, I think we're gonna get a progress report
Yep.
and we.
So should we make a motion to request a quarterly progress report on special education on any of your needs?
Well, you want one in a month, right, for the Bartlett programming specifically, or do you wanna, I mean, I wouldn't wanna wait. like-
No,
Yeah.
no, we want one on the Bartlett, the task force that
Yep.
we're doing, and it's actually 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
meeting.
okay. Okay.
Not to say any decisions, but
Yeah.
But
Okay.
who's
Yeah,
the team,
that's easy.
an update,
Yeah.
we'll get an update. We don't need a motion for that, right? So just motion to adjourn.
Motion, all right.
Sounds
To adjourn, good at that.
Mr. Doherty and then his Martin.
Yep.
Okay, adjourned.